Howdy, and welcome to the channel. And in this video, we're going to be installing this quick disconnect on our Kia Soul, and we're going to be covering which vehicle something like this would actually work really good on. And this turns out to be the wrong part. So why would you want something like this on your vehicle? Well, something like this works really good on vehicles that you don't drive very often. For example, this Kia Soul actually sits in our yard most of the time, and maybe once a month we come out and we drive it. The problem is, with that length of a time period, it's not driven enough. The battery typically goes just down below where it needs to be to actually start it. Well, this quick disconnect is going to allow us to be able to turn off the battery to where any kind of parasitic draw, like the radio for the clock, it's not going to have that problem anymore. Other cases, this would actually work really good as a theft deterrent. Now, obviously, if the perpetrator's smart enough to pop the hood, they'll be able to see something like this. But for the average person who's going to go out there and think about stealing, they're probably not that smart anyway and won't be looking for something like this. The other thing that this works really good is on some of those older vehicles. And I know on a lot of the older vehicles, they have a very regular parasitic draw that happen with them. And something like this can really help with those vehicles. Now, something like this, you have to keep in mind that this is going to completely cut the power from your vehicle. So your clock is going to be reset. If your radio doesn't have memory in it, then your presets may be lost as well. So keep that in mind whenever you decide to pick something like this up. Also, very important note with something like this. If you have one of the new vehicles that have all of the computers integrated into it and everything has to talk, something like this could actually be very detrimental for your vehicle. So please make sure before you throw something like this in there that it's not going to cause you problems. Okay, before we get started on this project, just want to let you know at the end of this video, there's going to be a brief little time where I'm just talking and giving you the story of where I got the name TBK. So if you're interested in that, be sure to stick all the way through the end of the video. So here's some of the tools that you're going to need for a job like this. First of all, you're going to need the battery disconnect itself. You might want to apply some dielectric grease to make sure that you don't get corrosion around your terminals. Then you want some type of terminal cleaner. Even if they look clean, it's really smart to go ahead and clean your terminal. Now I have a few different options here. You can grab one of these old school, and it has an insert, and that goes on the inside of the ring, and then it has one that goes around the battery post itself. These work really well for what they are. They're pretty cheap. You can usually pick them up next to nothing at Harbor Freight or AutoZone or O'Reilly, someplace like that. If you don't have something like that, you can just grab a nice soft bristle brush like this brass brush. It works really well on something like this. The thing to remember, the terminals on here are lead, so you don't want to be inhaling any of the fumes that come up off the battery terminals or any of the particles, because lead poisoning is not good. So use something that's soft, that's not going to scour it really bad and create a lot of flakes. The last thing you can use is something like this Ryobi 4-volt high-speed rotary tool. And this is a great application for this particular tool. It spins slow enough, and I've got this oxide bit on it, and I'm going to use it to try to clean the inside of these battery terminals to make sure that they are nice and clean. You're still going to have to be careful with this though, because it is going to be throwing all sorts of metal all over the place, so don't inhale that stuff. Now in this particular vehicle, you're going to need a 13 millimeter, and I typically like to grab the deep well sockets, but it's completely up to you, and your vehicle may use something different than the 13 mil. But one thing I highly suggest, anytime you're working around the battery, grab one of these composite ratchets. I have metal ratchets and they work, but the problem is if you're on the hot terminal and you're using it and you accidentally slap it against the other terminal or against the engine block or against the body, well, you have just arced the entire system, and that can actually cause you problems all the way up to the battery exploding. The battery exploding is very rare, but it can happen. The other thing that can happen is if you're not fast enough with it, you can actually weld this to the body or to the chassis or even to the engine block, and then you're going to have to grab something while the whole battery is heating up and try to knock it off. It's a scary situation. You can prevent all of that by using one of these composite ratchets. Okay, to start out with, I'm going to go ahead and pull off the battery terminals. I was taught when I was a young man that you pull off the positive, set it aside, and then you pull off the negative. So I'm going to go ahead and loosen our positive here. Okay, we're just going to set that aside, and then we're going to do the negative. Now, technically, I didn't have to do the negative because this is solely going to go on the positive side. However, since I'm here, I am going to go ahead and take the time to clean the post. You might as well, and this will make sure that you don't have any problems with it. I'm going to use the old-fashioned one here on the negative terminal, and then all we do is take this and twist it down on top of the terminal, and you can definitely see there is already a new fresh sheen on the outside. And then we're going to put our little pad back on there. Now for this side, you can use something like this brass brush. It works as well, and you can just start here and start to scrub. You can even go across the top if you want to. If there is corrosion on the top, I would recommend hitting the top with your brass brush. Same thing. We do not have an inside on this tool. You can see inside there, there's no wires at the top. So that means it did not clean off the top of the terminal. Now we're not connecting anything to the top of the terminal, but what we're trying to do here is to take any corrosion that's on it and actually take it away from the entire thing. All right, so that's all good. Now for the terminals themselves, this is where something like this little tool can come in really handy. And if you have a small enough one, you can actually put it on the inside. I can't quite fit it in here, so I'm just gonna work a little bit on the bottom of this. I'm gonna get what I can with it. One of these, hopefully yours isn't as abused as this one is. This one is old and has been around for quite a while, and we're just taking it and pulling it back and forth to make sure that our sides are nice and clean. Then you can see down in there, I no longer have any corrosion on the terminals. You can see where it's actually scraped things clean. So that one's good. I'm gonna set that one down. Then I'm gonna grab our positive and I'm gonna do the same thing with it. All right, so now terminal's clean. We're gonna go ahead and put on our little felt piece. Now what we've done is we have undone our nut and bolt just a little bit, and we're gonna try to put this on, and a lot of times it won't squeeze on just like that. So what we have to do is just grab either a large screwdriver or a pair of pliers and open this up just a little bit. Okay, so now we're just gonna grab our screwdriver and I'm gonna twist it and physically open up this end a little bit. So as you can see, I wasn't able to use the screwdriver, so I had to open it up a little bit with some of my duckbill pliers. So now I'm just going to tighten down our bolt, get it nice and snug on here. There we go. That looks real good.
You sure about that?
So this one, on the new one that we got, was a 14 mil, and for this one, we're going back to the 13. There we go. So that side is all done. So now all we have to do is put on our negative. You know, it's funny. That actually broke on me there a little bit. Not broke.
You sure about that?
Okay, so now comes the dielectric grease if you want to do it. And what you would do is you would take a little bit and you would place it on the top and cover the parts that can get corroded so that you prevent issues with that part. And that right there is all you have to do. Right now, we have this to the red, which means that there is no power. But if we want to turn it on, we rotate it like... It's not going to rotate on me. Yeah, it hits, but it's supposed to click all the way up. That's what it did before. Okay, so as you could see, we tried really hard to put this on there. First of all, we had to spread it really far, although the description specifically stated that it would fit this style battery. You also noticed whenever we tightened down the positive side over here, we really had to tighten it down quite a bit. It did work, and it was going to be okay, but then you saw whenever I tried to turn it on, and watch, if it's off the car, it's flawless. It works great, no problems at all. But as soon as you spread this wide enough to actually get it to hold on to the battery, it no longer turns on and off. So this was specifically listed to fit this style of battery with this terminal size. So either they sent me the wrong one or the description was incorrect. And this is actually a really good lesson for everybody out there. I used to get so angry with myself and I would have to deal with that anger, but this is not a failure on me. This is a failure of me being sent the correct part or the listing being wrong or whatever. It didn't work, but that doesn't mean that I am a failure and it doesn't mean that I am a problem. Same with you guys that are out there doing this stuff. If it doesn't work the first time, that's okay. It's no problem. Roll with the punches. It does not mean that you are a failure, and that's really important. The best way that we can learn in this life, and I know you've probably heard this, and I heard this a lot as a kid, and I didn't believe people, but I firmly believe it now. The best way for you to learn in life is to fail. If you succeed at everything you put your hands to, you might learn a little bit with it, but trust me, you're gonna learn so much more through those failures than you do through the successes. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to get measurements on our battery terminals and I'm gonna order the correct part and make sure that they actually talk about the terminal sizes in the description. And I'm gonna purchase another one because I still wanna fix my problem. My problem didn't go away just because this thing broke. The problem's still here and it still needs to be addressed. So this is the story of how I got the nickname TBK. Just so you know, it actually stands for something very specific, and this goes back to my college years, so it was quite a while ago. So in my college days, I actually was a computer science major to start with. And one of the things that we frequently had to do was we had to go up into this big, giant room of terminals. And we all sat around these terminals and we all had to enter our Fortran and C into our big VAX VMX system. So as we were sitting there programming, we also were tied into the old school IRC back in the day. And I'm sitting there doing my programming and all of a sudden I get a notification. And I look over and somebody said, "Hey, you. Just curious, do you happen to drive a black car?" Now this made me a little bit nervous because of what car I did drive. But I was going to be very coy about this because you never know. There is actually a lot of pre-law students who were taking programming classes at the time. So I replied and said, "What are you referring to?" And they said, "Well, you know, I think I saw you the other day driving on the freeway. And pretty sure you were in a black car. Was that you?" And I'm like, doesn't sound familiar, but can you tell me a little bit more what you're talking about? "Oh, yeah, I can tell you the story. There was a long line of cars that were sitting side by side, and this black car really helped out." "Oh, yes, I do know that." And so here is the story of what happened on that fateful day on the interstate. Coming out of the college town, going to the next largest town, there was 2 lanes one direction and 2 lanes the other direction. We're heading northbound, beautiful day out, crystal clear, blue skies, absolutely hot as can be Texas day. And I'm driving along, having a grand old time until I pull up on this mile-long row of cars. Now the speed limit at the time was 65 miles an hour, but this entire row of cars was floating between 40 and 45 miles an hour. That's going to make the next trip take well over an hour in length in order for me to get to my destination. Well, I couldn't have that because I was late for work. I had to get there. So I start working my way through traffic, slowly but surely, pulling from lane to lane, actually getting further and further ahead. And sure enough, at some point, I actually get all the way up to the front of the line, and there's 2 cars sitting side by side, floating between 40 and 45 miles an hour. Well, I pull behind the one in the left-hand lane, and I flashed my lights. And you have to picture this. This was a 1986 Mercury Capri. These things are very similar to the old Mustang 5.0s. And in Texas DPS drove Mustang 5.0s. Now what was really interesting about their headlights is whenever they put on their headlights for hazards, for letting you know that they were going to pull you over, they actually rotated from the inside to the outside, and it just was the high beam, low beam, because you had the insides that were high and the outsides that were low. Well, on my particular car, whenever you flashed to let somebody know that it was safe to pass or whatever. That's a built-in feature on cars. It would actually do the same thing. It would flip-flop. So by default, my car actually looked just like a Texas DPS. It was black, just like theirs were. Now, they had white hoods. I didn't. I had an entirely black car. But if you weren't paying attention and if you didn't notice, you would immediately think, oh, it's a cop. This person thought that exact thing. So as soon as they saw me flashing my lights, telling them to move because they weren't moving, they were sitting side by side, they sped up and moved over. And as soon as that happened, I went by and the whole row of people followed me all the way to the next town. So I'm in the ready room and I get that notification. Whenever I finally tell that person, yes, I drive a black car, and they said, does it look like a cop car? Yes, it does, but I'm not impersonating a cop. It doesn't have anything on it that looks like a cop car. It's just that the lights do that by default. Well, I just wanted to say thank you, because you prevented me from being late from work, and my friend who was behind me wasn't late for work. So that was 3 people being held up that were gonna be late for work that this little trick worked on. And so that individual said, you know what? You're a knight in shining armor. You're my black knight because you're in the black car. And that's what I'm gonna call you from now on, is TBK, the Black Knight. Of course, there's connotations that go along with that. There's the Black Knight from Monty Python. Come back here and fight me. I'll gnaw your leg off. But that's not where it comes from. It actually comes from the car. So that is my story of where TBK actually comes from. Absolute honest truth. That's where the story comes from, and I've kept it this entire time. So that was a long time ago when that happened, and ever since then, that's what my screen name has been, and I have kept true to it. There are people in this world that simply know me as TBK. They don't know my real name, and that's okay. It's something that I go by, and it makes me smile whenever somebody calls me that, because I know the story that's behind it, and now you do too. So that's the story of TBK. Thank you very much for sticking around, if you did, to listen to that fun little tale. And if you have any questions about today's work, again, failures happen. That's perfectly fine. Don't sweat it. But if you have any questions about it, if you have any theories, if you have any ideas, please leave them in the comments below. Especially great comments like this one. Thank you very much for leaving that comment. And remember, keep your tools sharp and your batteries charged. We'll catch you on the next one.